Hey there, this is Ona with Art of Awakening, and I just want to share with you a little bit of some downloads that I got about the topic of integration. And I am recording this on the fall equinox, but really this is kind of, doesn't matter what time of year you're watching this. If you've been through a period of intense spiritual growth, and at the time that I'm recording this, we've had collectively quite a few months, actually a couple of years of very intense spiritual growth. But it can happen at any time, depending on where you are in your personal journey. If you're landing here, it's likely that you've just come or are coming out of a period like that. So there comes this time where it's time to integrate what you've learned, and it's really a time that does correspond, no matter what time of year you happen to be in. Personally, it corresponds like on the medicine wheel with the season of fall, and just quieting down, right? So after you've been through this period of growth, and if you think in terms of the seasons of the year, the planting and the harvesting, and the planting, the growing, the harvesting, and then there comes a time where things have to lie fallow for a little bit. And it kind of corresponds. This is why the Jewish High Holy Days, which is what they consider to be the New Year, happen in the fall, because it's a time to reflect back on the year that has passed, and to actually prepare for the one to come, based on what you just learned, what you've brought in, and what you've worked through. So again, it's kind of this period of integration where you're taking this wisdom, this knowledge that you've gained, and actually working through it, understanding it, because we can work through the lessons, but then we have to kind of sit with it for a while before they really become a part of who we are. Okay, so there's this period of time where, we've got the lessons fresh, but we need to just really kind of let them sink in. So it is a little bit of, it's a very special time, and very almost vulnerable time, because it's sort of like you've been on this merry-go-round, right? Because a lot of times when we learn lessons, they're lessons that we've had to face again and again and again. Like, we don't always pass our lessons the first time. And the wonderful thing about the universe is it's like it's okay if you fail a test, because you just get to take it again. That I'm saying this tongue-in-cheek, but it's true, right? But conversely, it also throws us the opportunities again. So if we miss an opportunity, that comes around again as well. So the universe is, it's fair both ways. But this is a time where, the integration period is really important, because if you've come through this learning process and have gone through this lesson and perhaps passed a test, or but it's really easy to want to just get moving again, get back up on our feet. And what can happen is, if we don't integrate properly, we can end up hopping back on the merry-go-round again, instead of going towards the next thing, right? So getting back on that loop. And I guess, as an aside, the reason I've got this earthworm in here is that earthworm, it has been bringing me this message. It has assisted in, giving me these downloads. The earthworm keeps coming up for me lately, and it does have a lot to do with this whole idea of integration. Because what an earthworm does is it digests the dead stuff that's fallen. Okay, after the harvest, after everything's been said and done, and the things, the leaves fall, the stalks and the fruits or whatever fall to the ground, and they start to sink into the ground, right? The earthworm assists in that process. So it's really a digestive organ of the earth. And it moves slowly and it's very humble, right? So this integration process is a very humbling process because we get to look back at kind of all the things about us that have been exposed, right? That we've had to, like the shadow parts of us that we've had to face and, either, transmute or assimilate, but we really come face to face with our humanity. So it can be a very, very humbling process, and in that willingness to own the shadow part of us, that's part of the whole integration process. But then another thing that can happen is that we all have, as part of our ego selves, these zones of comfort, right? And it's an important survival thing. It's like there's a reason we have comfort zones, because it takes a lot of energy to change, or there takes a lot of energy to kind of to do things differently, right? And if we had to approach everything we do like that as if it was new, it would take so much energy, it would be really hard for us to survive. And that's why animals, including humans, have these comfort zones. So we find some kind of pattern in life, or even a physical location or something that we're comfortable in, we tend to want to stay there. And nature does this for, like I said, for a purpose. It helps with survival, and it also helps. It's like when you're comfortable somewhere, you stay at, if in an ecosystem that's working properly, that's going to be a healthy place for you to be. And the problem is that we humans have created this strange scenario, right? Through this whole awakening process has forced us to, has created some very interesting situations to where a lot of us grow up and get used to scenarios that really aren't in our best interest, but it becomes a comfort zone, right? So I call them actually zones of seductive discomfort. And so when we come to the end of a cycle, and we've been going through these lessons, and we've come to this point of integration, this is why it's so important to pause and to really not rush through this phase, because if we rush through it, it kicks us very easily back into the patterns, right? Because when we're trying to go through things fast, that's when the brain wants to take the easy way, because it takes a lot of energy to move, right? So rushing tends to it's very, very easy to go back into the patterns that we're used to, which, can easily be these zones of seductive discomfort. Seductive because they are so compelling, so easy to fall back into these patterns. Okay, so that's what Earthworm is asking that us to really consider right now, is if you are in this position of having come through lessons, having come through challenges, and feel like, oh wow, I've really made a breakthrough. I've gone through all these lessons. The encouragement is to don't go too fast past this point. Take a little time. There's plenty of time. We live like. The universe has eternal time, right? You have all the time in the world to sit and really sit and integrate. You don't have to feel like it's time for the next thing. I mean, if you're feeling really, really anxious about that, maybe consider sitting down a little bit longer and really breathing a while and making sure. So how do you tell if you're being sucked back into a zone of seductive discomfort, or if it's really your voice calling you forward to move on to the next thing, that you're really called to do? Well, it's the the voice of seductive discomfort usually has some kind of urgency to it, like, oh, you know, do this, do this, do this, because if you don't, oh man, these scary things are going to happen, right? Or don't do that, because what if this, what if that, right? So if you start feeling like this little, and sometimes it can be really, again, this is seductive, right? So it can start out sounding really good. But then if you find yourself with your mind going around and around a little bit anxious about this, it is probably a zone of seductive discomfort, rather than like when spirit talks to you, when spirit tells you to do something, it's typically like, do this, do this, or don't do that. But it's typically very clear. And then, when you start going on that course, it tends to get even clearer or just feels clear, right? You don't get this little thing going around your head. Should I do this? Should I not do that? What happens for this? What happens if that, right? So those zones of seductive discomfort, either they're going to be like this little anxiety voice going around and around your head, or they're going to be like numbing, right? Where you just sort of slide into them, and before you realize you're back in the same thing, right? But it's not a clear feeling. It's not a spirit will usually call you to action in a very clear way that starts to feel invigorating. It starts to feel good. Okay, so just a few thoughts about integration. I hope this has helped. If you've enjoyed this, absolutely, I would love to hear your comments. Love to hear your thoughts. And your thoughts, remember, anytime you share your thoughts, it can help somebody else. All right, so I also appreciate your likes, your subscribes, and I will leave resource links below if you want to know more about working with me or about my deck. Have a lovely day, and we'll catch you again soon.